Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I've got quite a bit of updating to do about the DreamFeather Spectral Throw Rave Saber build. Now, as I mentioned, it's only Rave Sabers just because of the two MTXs, Goddess Unleashed and Goddess Scorned. Otherwise, it's just a Dreamfeather non-crit Fizz ST. You can use the Buzzsaw MTX2 and it looks pretty damn fancy, as I'll show you in a second. But all in all, the character has been going absolutely great for what it's worth, and probably one of the most enjoyable and smoothest spectral throws I've played in quite a while. Now that is largely because of the attack speed, the movement speed, and in the end just the clear speed as well as the defensive capabilities, since we do end up hitting about 70 to 80% evasion. There's our Buzzsaw MTX. About 70 to 80% evasion, 45% dodge, 45% spell dodge, a Vile Grace, and on top of that, Fortify from Whirling Blades, some decent leech from our Flask, and just a shitload of movement speed, so barely anything ever hits you. Essentially, all the way up until level 88, I did not die once. I did die twice running two Vinctar maps, and that's because I face tanked some things I shouldn't have, but even past that, end up doing a couple of or three Uber Series runs, deathless all in a row, and yeah, the build has just been completely insane to play with. And at this stage of the build, as you can see, I have just slotted in a Vinctars. So up until about tier 9s, tier 10s, I was running a movement speed flask, and that was completely fine, even on a 5-link. Once I got to something like tier 10s, you really benefit quite a lot from having a Vinctars in your setup, which fits perfectly fine because I have the Pathfinder passives to make yourself status immune, so you don't have to worry about the shock, and it fits in quite nicely into the Pathfinder setup. I had to drop my Quicksilver Flask, but I think it's 100% worth it if you're going to take this build into more of an endgame setting, like tier 10 plus maps, as well as certain things like Uber Series and probably even Core, though I've not yet tried that. Since I only just hit level 88, I managed to get to some Uber Series runs and a few high-end maps like this here Shrine with double piety. Popping my Vile Grace, I'm at 75 spell dodge and dodge, so pretty much nothing's going to be hitting or killing me for the most part, and that's why it's so easy. So for the Uber Series run, I took out my 6th link and did the entire run 5-linked. First of all, I did a 6-link run and it went really well, completely deathless, so decided to make sure it's well doable in a 5-link too. And as you can see, trash is a bit of a problem, it just doesn't die that quick. But bosses were a little bit finicky, but very much fun and doable, because the poison stacking we get from the added chaos and some of the fizz from your actual weapon and build ends up doing quite a lot of poison damage if you can stand still for long enough to get it stacking. Now we use slow proj in place of greater multiple projectiles to get this poison stacking going, because GMP really does lower your poison damage quite substantially since it's a less multiplier. And yeah, the only issue, as you can see here, is we go into slow proj and it does make it so you're almost a melee character, and in some cases that gets you into a bit of trouble, but for the most part it was pretty comfortable. I've sped it up here a couple times because I do kite a fair bit, since the slow proj makes it so you can't really stand still for too long since you're not killing many adds. But like I said, it was pretty deathless. Well, it was deathless, and so was a couple of other runs before and after this, and I'd say it's a strong Uber Series farmer if you can get your rotation and playstyle right with this build. If you want to face roll Uber Series, you're probably looking for something else, but for what this is, it was very good, considering it only cost probably say a couple of X to put together in total. Most of the currency goes towards, I suppose, Vinctars, if you end up running that, and you probably should. Besides that, running a 5-link, I'll go over the gear in a second, but there's really nothing terribly expensive about this build, at least not at this stage. Maybe at the start of a league it wouldn't be the greatest, because it's going to take a few specific items for you to get, and who knows, Dreamfeather's maybe in a bit of demand. As well as just getting the right type of stuff, like a good Queen of the Forest, a Devotos, though not strictly necessary, and a few other things, just like decent enough jewelry with some open mods, as well as high enough gem levels. So it takes a bit of time to scale, and I'll tell you why that is when I go over the gear in just a second. This is just us cleaning up the 5-link Uber Eats Zero run. As you can see, with the amount of dodge I have in evasion, I pretty much never get hit by spears. It is possible though, so be careful. Anyway, we'll jump into what the character setup looks like. Here is the character in all of its blazing glory. Kind of have a decent MTX setup, I think, given that the two weapons look rather cool, and I have a sovereign weapon effect attached to them. Without sovereign weapon effect, if you're curious, this is what the two weapons look like while wearing them. So they are pretty cool and worth skinning over if you can afford to, or if you have them laying around as well. The character is level 88, called Finding Failure, and it is of course a Pathfinder. Now, running 92% hit at the moment, and this is what the defense tab looks like. Running a Stone Golem and Blasphemy Vulnerability. So Stone Golem, doesn't really matter what you pick, it's just some nice added life regen, as Flame Golem barely does any extra damage anyway, so I just went for the regen for comfort in certain situations. 20,000 evasion without flask sub, and that's 60% chance to evade. When pressing the important flasks, that is Jade Flask with increased evasion, as well as Stibnite, which gives another 100% evasion rating, pressing all the flasks together goes to 53k evasion, meaning we're something at like 120% or so extra damage, attack damage, from the Dream Feathers. So wearing both of them there, that's something like 200, I don't know, 30-40% extra attack damage, which basically all goes towards scaling our added Chaos Gem. So as you can see, the damage split here is about 1,000 top end Fizz and about 2,000 top end Chaos. So it's about a 30-60, something like that, split of Fizz into Chaos. And when popping all our flasks, you can see Chaos shoots up to 3,400 and Fizz up to 1,200. So most of the damage from the build comes from your added Chaos Gem, meaning when you're first leveling this build, or if your added Chaos is level 17, 18, bear in mind the maximum amount of damage you're going to be getting is when it's level 20, or even level 21 in this case, because that's basically all of the damage of the build. You have your Spectral Throw, your Pierce, for 28% more projectile damage. That also double dips onto the poison, so quite worth using. Void Manipulation gives you more chaos damage and more poison damage. GMP, and then your 6th link is faster attacks. I can't really decide what else you could do. You could use Culling Strike, but that's kind of weak as well. And Fizz Proj definitely sucks. I tried that out. It's not very good. And then when you go for single target, swap out your GMP with your slower proj, and you end up firing basically directly in front of you. But with faster attacks, your attack speed is completely insane, ends up being something like 8 attacks a second, fully buffed. And you've also got your melee Ancestral War Chief ready to give you a hand for DPS. Now that is the Ancestral War Chief, added Chaos, Conk Effect, and less duration. Less duration because, once again, more damage multiplier affects your poison as well as your chaos damage, thus we are using it. He doesn't do that much damage, but he does still add to your ST whenever you need him for single target. So those are the two weapons when I initially bought them, about 5 or 10 chaos each. Queen of the Forest runs you around 5 to 50 chaos depending on the role, and then get it 5 linked if you can. Devotos, not all that necessary. We have an absolutely insane amount of attack speed and movement speed, so you don't really need to stack more than that. If you want, just get a life helm and that'll make resists a bit easier, and potentially also fill in some int that you need. One thing I will mention though, this is what your movement speed looks like, 84%, and then just popping your evasion flasks, you go up to 173%. When you don't have a Vinctars and you're using a Quicksilver, we go up to about 250%. And that's all coming because of Queen of the Forest, 1% movement speed per 450 evasion. So in the end, it gives you about 100 odd movement speed, takes away 25, probably gains about 80% in the long run. Besides that, the gear is not too notable. At series steps, I really tried to fit those in just for the extra spell dodge. If you can't do it, just wear some plain old evasion, run speed, life boots. I don't really do too much running anymore now that I've got Vinctars. I'm still pretty fast, but typically I'll be whirling around at a sufficient speed and just doing some running whenever I feel like I need it, because it's still very fast when you got your flasks up and rather comfortable. Besides that, just some rings. I tried to go for rings with life and resist and with an open prefix so you can craft chaos damage onto them. It's not a big deal if you can't, but you know, the more the merrier, as well as fizz damage if you can get it. I couldn't get any fizz damage on my rings. I could get it on my amulet though. And likely you'll want at least one accuracy roll somewhere. I have it on this amulet. Now the chaos damage roll actually is fairly expensive, so be careful of that, and I think it requires a level 6 or 7 Aerion. There it is, 13 chaos. Other things to mention, the Vinctars itself doesn't really matter which one you get, but I went for the attack damage one, lightning damage to attacks, so it does give you a bit of extra lightning there, 140 to 590, which helps for your leech. Besides that, there's not too much to mention. Behemoth leash, leather belt. So for your belt, what you're really looking for is reduced flask charges used, and you can craft increased flask duration on yourself, but you can also get it as a mod, so you can find a belt with both those mods already on there. And then just some resist attack speed life gloves. So gear is pretty basic, and I'll post that up for you guys to look at yourselves. Not much else to mention. Vulnerability, blasphemy, using grace and all that with enlighten just to free up a bit of extra mana. Blood magic, faster attacks, welling blades, and fortify as your movement setup. And that's about all there is to it. As far as the passive tree goes, tried as hard as I could to get as much projectile damage, because projectile damage scales both your chaos and your fizz, as well as helping out the poison. And then going for quite a few jewels in the end. 1, 2, 3, and that's it. Shit, not that many jewels. Anyway, 4 jewels. So they are somewhat important. Try and get life, damage, and an attack speed mod. If you can get 2 damage mods, like damage and projectile damage, that's even better. But life on pretty much every one of my jewels, they weren't terribly hard to get, but you may have to make some compromises, bear in mind. Otherwise, like I said, mostly projectile damage, a couple of flask nodes, one here, one there, and filling out the life. By the time I'm level 90, I should have about 5,300 life, maybe even 54. I think you should be able to get about 5,500 if you try real hard. Besides that, you know, some attack speed, some fizz in the sword nodes, some fizz there, some attack speed fizz. You know, there's some choices to make. Maybe you can perfect the tree a bit more to your own liking, and as well acro and phase acro. And what I did for the actual Pathfinder Ascendancy was go for Nature's Adrenaline first, then Master Herbalist, that's how you poison, grab Nature's Boon, and then a Master Alchemist so that we can run Vinctars, and as many other flasks as you damn well please. I don't really feel like you get too much out of the other 2 nodes, so do what you want, but I really did feel like Pathfinder was a pretty good addition here, and yeah. It was either Pathfinder or Raider as far as I was concerned, since I was going non-crit, and Pathfinder won out in the end just for my money. This is the build. This was Rave Sabers, I guess, or Dreamfeather Spectral Throw. I had a lot of fun with it. If I could start this out again on the new expansion, easily, I would, but I think it might be just a little too hard to level quickly, so I'm not going to, I don't think. In any case, I've had a lot of fun. This is probably one of my favourite Spectral Throw builds I've played recently, and that's about it. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.